One personality trait that all CEOs have in common is our narcissism. And it's strange that we would think that being a narcissist is a good thing, but you need to be, and here's why. Narcissists believe that they're right. And you have to believe that you're right when you put out a project or you put out a goal or you're driving towards a vision, because everyone is going to tell you that you're wrong. The banks are going to say no. Your board is going to say no or be cautious. Your lawyers, your accountants, your customers, you're constantly bumping into obstacles along that path to something that you just know feels correct. I'll give you a strange example of this, but back in the summer of 2008, Wednesday night, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm being pitched by this entrepreneur on this amazing business idea that he's got. And 4 of the 5 people listening to him told him that it was the stupidest idea that we'd ever heard. And that was the night that Garrett Camp, the founder of Uber, was telling me and 4 of my friends about his great idea to start Uber. And I said it was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. Paul said it was the dumbest thing he'd ever heard. Mark said it was the dumbest thing. And the only person who invested was Tim Ferriss, put $25,000 in that night. Tim was sitting beside me. Tim's 25 grand was worth 108 million the day of the IPO. But Garrett's narcissism has allowed him to start Uber. 6 months later, Travis Selnick joined him as CEO. So we need to be a little bit narcissistic to believe in our dreams when everyone else around us is saying no. There's a few traits that are very overlooked in terms of being an entrepreneur. And I think sadly, social media has really popularized what being an entrepreneur is and how fun it can be to be an entrepreneur. But there's some real good traits out there that I was groomed at as an entrepreneur. My father groomed the 3 kids to be entrepreneurs. One of the traits is that tenacity. It's that dog-like work ethic to get over, under, around any obstacle put in your path, because there's going to be a lot of obstacles put in your path. And people don't show the truth on social media about how hard it can be to be that entrepreneur, right? They show the beauty of flying private and all the money and the trips, and I can do what I want when I want. But that dog-like tenacity and that work ethic that really needs to happen is key. The second one is you really need to be able to sell. Now, people kind of shy away from sales, or, oh, I don't like sales, or I can delegate sales. Not really. As the CEO or the entrepreneur, you're selling the bank, you're selling investors, you're selling people to join your startup or join your company or quit their job and join you. You're selling them on projects, you're selling them on ideas, you're selling the customers, you're selling suppliers. You're really constantly in sales mode, selling your vision. So sales is really key. And then the third ability is the ability to problem solve and think on your feet. And I think we miss that chance, maybe even on social media, to tell potential entrepreneurs that if you can't problem solve quickly, your team isn't going to be able to follow. At the end of the day, there's no real set rule book. There's no set manual. I mean, there's lots of books out there, but entrepreneurs need to be able to see the problem, react very quickly. So we have to be quick starts. We have to be high in intuition. We have to be able to problem solve quickly. And it's never about the perfect solution to the problem. It's about momentum creating momentum. It's about minimum viable everything. So the ability to actually see all the information, which is why having attention deficit disorder is such a superpower for an entrepreneur. We can talk about that in another video. When you can see everything and synthesize it quickly, it allows you to problem solve quickly. Those are the 3 big overlooked areas that entrepreneurs need to be strong in. One of the biggest superpowers that an entrepreneur has, and it's been called a disorder by the medical community and the school system for years, which frankly pisses off almost every entrepreneur out there, is ADD, attention deficit disorder, is not a disorder if you're an entrepreneur. It's actually your biggest superpower. Now, yes, if you want to be an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, then perhaps you need to be so highly focused all of the time. But when you're an entrepreneur, if you're so highly focused, you miss everything else. So entrepreneurs need to see at every given moment what's happening with the economy, our suppliers, our customers, the market, our employees, the data. We need to notice the little problems with the websites, problems that are happening. We need to be able to have all this information always coming at us. The hard part for entrepreneurs is we get disfocused because of it all. But if we're good, we can delegate quickly. So when entrepreneurs learn how to harness their superpower and take all that information in and focus on the critical few things and delegate everything except genius, that's the matching point. But when entrepreneurs try to focus their ADD, they get so hyper-focused they miss everything else. Their business actually suffers because of it. So it is one of the biggest strengths of an entrepreneur is our ADD. Another one that we can talk about is the strengths of bipolar disorder. Most entrepreneurs, and I'm not making fun of bipolar, but most entrepreneurs are on the spectrum for bipolar disorder too. So I know that by the medical community, they've talked about bipolar disorder as being a problem, and it is. If you're on the fringe, on the very, very outer edges of the spectrum, bipolar can be a huge problem. In fact, my son has been diagnosed as hypomanic. He's actually been diagnosed at one point and was in a psych ward for bipolar disorder. They later realized he actually wasn't, and they unwound that diagnosis. But I'm bipolar. I have 17 of the 18 signs of attention deficit disorder, and I have 11 of the 11 signs of bipolar disorder. Now, bipolar is manic depression. The mania side of bipolar is why people will invest in me. It's why they'll quit their job. It's why they'll believe in what I do. It's why the media wants to cover me. It's why you're listening to this video, is you like the energy that comes off of that uninformed optimism, and that kind of manic energy is what people are attracted to with entrepreneurs. The stress and depression that happens, and yes, everybody gets depressed, but here's the difference. Entrepreneurs cannot tell their team about how stressed they are. They can't tell their employees. They can't tell their bank. They can't tell their accountant or their lawyer. They can't tell their board. They often can't tell their spouse that they're worried their business is going bankrupt because the day before we thought we were going to take over the world. We thought we were going to launch to the moon, and then the rocket crashes. Or we were trying to hire that great new employee, and then we're worried about meeting payroll the next day. Or we're investing in all this marketing, and we're not paying ourselves enough. There's all of this stress that is magnified on top of the entrepreneur, and we often live in this very silent bubble. So it's important that entrepreneurs put themselves into some mastermind communities like EO, like Vistage, like the Genius Network, like Baby Bathwater, where you can learn from other entrepreneurs. Likewise, it's important for COOs to be in mastermind communities. But the big difference is the manic depression is a roller coaster that all entrepreneurs have to learn to ride, because you can't get off the roller coaster. At the theme park, you ride it once and you get off. The roller coaster of entrepreneurship is one that entrepreneurs ride every hour, every day, every week, and every year. And learning to leverage the highs and leverage the lows is powerful, because the manic depression is part of what makes us us. And it's also important for employees and spouses to learn this stuff, right? Like, employees need to understand, like, why is Matt so excited one day and so stressed out the next? Like, why does that happen? Well, that's just part of Matt. So, and his spouse is like freaked because she's like, well, why is he like this when she's more stable and, normal? That's one of the reasons why teachers don't like the entrepreneurial kids, is because we don't fit into their sandbox, right? The ADD and bipolar is disruptive to the rest of the classroom, so we don't fit. So then we're told to sit still and pay attention and work harder, and we're beat up in class. Most entrepreneurs were beat up and emotionally abused by the school system. And no, I'm not suggesting a class action lawsuit against the school system, but I am suggesting that teachers actually recognize, and that entrepreneurs actually recognize, what routinely happened from kindergarten until the end of maybe university. So that 18-year or 16-year period, we were emotionally told to sit still and pay attention and focus and try harder and stop talking and stop selling something to everybody else. Entrepreneurship has become cool now, but when I was growing up, we weren't the cool kids in the school system because we didn't fit into the school sandbox. Our ADD and our bipolar nature was a real misfit to the rest of the school system. So we were usually diagnosed with a problem and often medicated to try to become more like the norm. And because of that emotional abuse, we also sometimes suffer and starve for praise, and we're starving for recognition. And that's one of the things that now fuel many entrepreneurs, because we were starving for it for 16 years. I was not the smart kid in school, even though I was intellectually very smart. I understood how to do lots of things. My grades and the notes on every report card for all of those years gave me all of the negative reinforcement that I was unlike everyone else. Now I look back and I recognize I make more money than all of my teachers put together combined in an annual year, but I was told for so long that there was something wrong with me. So I think that's one of the reasons why entrepreneurs are the way that we are. Intuitively, we know that we're smart, right? Intuitively, we know that kids are buying our stuff. Intuitively, we just shut it down and we're like, the school system is stupid. I just need to get through. So my mantra became 5-0 and go. It's just like, let me graduate and get out of here. And then when I was 20 years old, I had 12 full-time employees already. It wasn't even against them at that point. It was just, you just dismissed them. Like, it was just, we build stuff in spite of them. Every successful leader needs to have great emotional intelligence, but it's something we need to work on. And I think it's because we're often driving so hard. We're running 100 miles an hour. My disc profile, I'm a 98I and I'm a 74D, which has me going so fast that I often don't notice what's happening around us. So for me, my ADD helps fuel some of my emotional intelligence. The fact that I notice everything around me, if I can slow down and pause and take it all in, allows me to actually consider the feelings or facts or the other parts of the situation or see it from a different perspective. And then also there's something that happens with the wisdom of years that you talk to a 30-year-old and they're like, oh, I've got 5 years of business experience. That's true. Then you talk to a 50-year-old who says they've got 25 years of business experience. Often they have 5 years, 5 times in a row. It's slowing down and kind of having some of that reflection, taking a look at your own contributions to some of the problems, helping yourself to consider your growth is where some of your emotional intelligence comes from. So it's a key skill that leaders have, but it's also a key skill that we have to work on. Every leader that I've ever met, especially CEOs, and this is probably very different for CEOs than COOs. Well, CEOs probably hate it too. Leaders hate dealing with conflict. We hate dealing with having to tell employees no. We hate having to fire people. But it's really that conflict situation where you're really having to tell a great employee that their idea is not going to market or their idea is not going to happen, or you disagree with them because of other data points or something you feel. So CEOs often walk away from that conflict because they like to look good inside of the company. They like to be that cheerleader, that kind of have the spotlight on them. They like to be that, brand ambassador. So it's easy for them to walk away from the problem because they get their COO to deal with it for them. So the COO hates conflict just as much, but we have to deal with the problems much more because someone has to do it. And our job is to make the CEO look good. Now, while the COO is making those tough decisions and saying no and making the CEO look good, internally, the CEO later needs to be the one saying, hey, the COO needs to make those tough decisions. I need them to be the bad cop when I'm playing good cop. So their job is to shine the spotlight on each other. The worst piece of advice I've ever been given was from my grandfather. And my grandfather was an entrepreneur, but he was an entrepreneur from a different era. And the advice that he gave me, and he gave it to me almost every day I walked out of his home, was work hard, keep your nose to the grindstone. Like, it was always about work hard, keep focused, keep working, keep working. And that working hard, the reason why that's bad advice is it's not about working hard.
Oh no!
It's about working smart. So I've seen this happen so often, and we've all seen it. You've seen the fly trying to get out the window, and that fly is going to keep banging its head on the window. It's going to keep working so hard to get out that window, and then it ends up dead on the windowsill. And if the fly would step back and look around and see opportunities, it would notice that there's a door right here that it could fly out the door and it would be free. There's usually a path of least resistance. There's usually an easier way. So my R&D stands for rip off and duplicate. I look for the systems that the best and the smartest people are using, and I do what they're doing. Instead of me working hard and trying to figure it out on my own and trying to brainstorm and try to plow through the problem, I step back and I look for who's already done this, and can I just do what they're doing? And can that path of least resistance, that minimum viable everything, can that momentum create more momentum? It's by doing it that way, it's smarter than working hard. So working smart trumps working hard.